Hey, what's up guys, Armadize here, and in this video I'll be talking about the i5-3570K and how it holds up in gaming performance in 2018. Now if you want to skip directly to the benchmarks, you can do that by just going to the description below, or in the comments there's going to be a pinned comment with the timestamps, so you can just click on the timestamps and jump into the performance. Now if you want to hear a little bit more about it, then keep listening. And so the i5-3570K is a processor that is almost 6 years old. In fact, it is 6 years old. And it is a 4-core, 4-thread processor. And it has 6 megs of cache. So this processor overclocks really well. And if you have it, you can overclock it. Even with the stock cooler, people have been able to get overclocks of 4 gigahertz. Now the stock clock is 3.8. When it turbos, and it has the turbo technology to go up and down, but we are going to be overclocking it to 4.5 gigahertz with a Hyper 212 Evo, which you can pick up very cheaply. So if you have that cooler or something similar, then you can easily push this processor with very respectable voltages. My personal processor was able to get 4.5 at stable clocks, and the voltage for it is 1.25 volts, which is a good voltage. The CPU does get a little bit toasty at around 70 degrees when playing, but that's pretty respectable temperatures. Now, if you want, you can obviously leave it at stock speeds, but honestly, once you see these results, you'll want to overclock the processor. So without any further ado, let's get into the benchmarks, guys. Okay, so first I tested GTA 5 using the in-game benchmark to ensure that there's no differences between the benchmarks that I did. Now, on stock clocks, we average 105 FPS, and the 1% lows and 0% lows of 45 and 37 FPS respectively. Now, once we overclock the processor to 4.5, we got an average of 109, which, grants us around 3.7% improvement, which is not great, but definitely respectable still. Now, I would say that, overclocking the processor here is definitely still worth it. And in terms of the game itself, it is definitely playable, though you will see some slowdowns once you go into the city, but nothing too major. And the game is very playable, and you can even bump up the resolution, obviously, if you have a better card, or you can lock the FPS to 60 with the VSync. Okay, moving on to Rise of the Tomb Raider 2015 title. Now here with the stock CPU clock, we got an average of 111 FPS and 1% lows of 50 and the 1% lows of 7 FPS, which indicated that we had a lot of stutters in the benchmark. Anyway, when we overclock the processor, we get an average of 114, which again is not a great FPS improvement on average. But look at the 0% one lows. We got an average of 22, which is a big improvement from the original stock clock of 7 FPS. And this kind of eradicated some of the stutters, but while playing the game myself, using this CPU, I did encounter some slowdowns, so do expect the average to drop down while playing this game. And it does indicate that the game is just trying to use more cores than, our CPU provides. Alright, moving on to Doom 2016. Now this game is an absolute marvel when it comes to performance, because even with our old generation i5, we still average 125 FPS with stock locks, and look at those 1% and 1% lows. Those are really nice to look at, indicating that there were just no slowdowns whatsoever. This game is just so smooth and is absolutely playable. Now I want to say I used the OpenGL mode. I didn't test any other modes like Vulkan or anything else, so you want to stick to that if you want to get these results. So yeah, very smooth. Now when we overclock, we do get a 10 FPS improvement on average, and our 1% and 0.1% lows do improve as well. So we see around 7.6% improvement when we overclock the processor, but overall Doom 2016 is very optimized and runs like butter. Okay, moving on to Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed Origins, a late 2017 title, and here when stock we are running at 45 FPS and 1% lows of 29 and 1% at 6, indicating that while running the benchmark we did get a lot of stutters back there while loading in the assets. Now, when we overclock the processor, we do get a nice 16% improvement with 53 on average and 25. Now, the 1% and 0.1% lows are a little bit lower, but honestly, that was just a stutter. So even when we overclock the processor, we couldn't get rid of those, those slowdowns, those, those stutters and stuff. But overall, while playing the game myself, just doing, playing the game, I did not experience like so much. I mean, you do get the slowdowns, and your FPS will drop, but in general, I would say it's still very playable. And honestly, that's just more than I expected from this 6 years old processor. So AC Origins, I mean, it's not 60 FPS, but honestly, I will take it. So yeah, let's just move on to the next game. Alright, next game on the list is Battlefield 1, and I tested the operations mode on Monte Grappa multiplayer map. Now, I made sure that we were running 64 players, and so we got the stock results here of 59 FPS, which was very respectable, but our 1% and 0.1% lows were kind of, well, and they were not great. The game would slow down, and it felt honestly a little bit, kind of slow, not very slow. It felt kind of laggy in that way. Now, once we overclock, we see a nice jump of 22% improvement to 74 FPS, and we got a much better 1% and 0.1% averages. Now, I would definitely suggest you to overclock the processor. Now, once we overclock, we still get those slowdowns. We still get the stutters every now and again. We still get the lags every now and again. It's 64 players, so definitely the CPU is getting a lot of draw calls. So our CPU, it does bottleneck our graphics card quite a bit, but overall it's very playable. And honestly, most maps you will be getting similar performance, but if you're running any lower players like 24 on TDM, you can get 60 FPS easily. Okay, next up on the list is PUBG, the Battle Royale game. And with the stock locks, we were getting 125 FPS, and the 1% lows of 30 and 0.1% of 12. Once we overclock, we don't see that big of a jump. As you can see, we actually got lower averages when overclocked. So yeah, now the reason why we got that, obviously this game is very hard to accurately test, so I couldn't really jump out of the same location. I did use the same map, the original map. I did use the same map, but again, I can't really test the same. And honestly, as you can see in the game, you can see that the statistics down on the top left of the screen, that this game actually doesn't bottleneck at all. We are primarily GPU bottlenecked. So yeah, now I always experience this weird stutter when jumping out of the plane. I don't know why, but once you reach the ground, you get this weird stutter. I don't know if this is just game specific or the processor specific, but yeah, tell me in the comments, guys, if you get this weird slowdown once you like land on the ground. But yeah, PUBG, very playable, and honestly, yeah, it's buttery smooth. Alright, moving into Fortnite, with the stock locks, we're getting 97 FPS, 1% lows of 17, and 0.1% lows of 9 FPS. Now, the slowdowns were, again, due to when landing, just the initial land phase. Once you're just getting down on the ground, you will get those slowdowns while just flying with your parachute or your umbrella, whatever. So you'll get those slowdowns. Now, when overclock, we get a nice jump of 12% to 110 FPS on average, and we, improve those 1% lows a little bit. Once again, Fortnite, very playable. It's not a very demanding game, honestly, but if you have 4 cores on this game, you can easily run Fortnite. So yeah. And last game on our list is The Witcher 3. And this game is proving to be a little bit of a challenge for our i5-3570K. Now, when we are running stock, by the way, the benchmark run that I did was just a walk around Novigrad City, so it's the most demanding part of the game, honestly, just so many NPCs and stuff like that in one place, so your CPU, once again, is going to be, kind of pegged at 100%. So, yeah, you will see that in the top left corner of the screen in my benchmark run. Now, with the stock 3.8 GHz, we are getting 61 FPS on average, and those 1% lows and 0.1% lows are just not very nice. That indicated stutter, and you might even see some stutter in the video footage. But yeah, once you kind of walk around the city, and especially if you run fast, you will notice if you run fast with the shift on, you know, when you sprint, you will see some actually dips, or if you're using your horse or stuff like that. Now, once we overclock 71 FPS average, we get a nice 15% improvement, which is definitely worth it, worth the overclocking, and our 1% lows do improve a little bit, but again, you still cannot get rid of those stutters. It will help a little bit, but not by much. Now, just for fun, kind of its experiment, we tested out the Cinebench R15 kind of, synthetic benchmark. So with the stock locks, we're getting 498 score, and once we overclock, we got a nice jump to 619. So kind of sweet, honestly. And it's kind of interesting. I want to point this out that Cinebench is kind of showing that once we overclock, we're actually very close to the i7 3770 at stock. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. And yeah, once again, we see a nice 21% improvement when we overclock the processor. Alright guys, so that was a long video. Oh my god, getting through those benchmarks. Anyway, so in conclusion guys, I will say that the i5 3570K is very capable in 2018, 2017. I mean, whatever game you throw at it, it will generally do great, honestly. So yeah, anyway, I did recommend this processor to one of my friends, and he's actually going to be getting it for around 50 bucks. So if you can find around $50 with the motherboard and stuff like that, the motherboards are kind of cheap as well. The LG 1155 boards that this processor obviously is compatible with. If you can find a nice price, then definitely pick up this processor. As you can see, it definitely overclocks the 1070 Ti. There's no question about it. But if you're running a 1060, that would actually be definitely a good pairing in my opinion. I mean, it would definitely still bottleneck in some areas, like the AC Origins. Our graphics card was capable of running AC Origins much better than what our processor allowed us to. So yeah, but a 1060, 1050, 1050 Ti, that kind of range of processors, you would be kind of okay, I think, with that. So yeah, once again, thank you guys for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, then click the like button. If you didn't, tell me if I missed something, in the comment down below if you want to ask some suggestions, or if you got any questions about this processor. If you guys gonna want a overclock guide on this processor, then definitely tell me down below as well. And I'll see you later guys. So yeah, thank you for watching.